One-room schoolhouses are almost a thing of the past, but there are still a few standing, like the one you see there behind me, the old Bellevue School here in the Underwood community of Macon County. Recently, I sat down and interviewed a few former teachers who actually taught in one-room schoolhouses, and they tell me teaching then was totally different than what teachers are trying to accomplish in the classroom today. There are just a few standing today. One-room schoolhouses in Macon County are almost all gone. The Bellevue School in the Underwood community still appears to be in good shape. In the Galen community, the old one-room schoolhouse here has been converted into a museum. Inside, you can see old photographs that date back to the early 1900s. In the Winklers community, the old Winklers schoolhouse is privately owned, but as you can see, has not been renovated in recent memory. Lafayette's Maisel Draper tells me she taught in 7 one-room schoolhouses between 1945 and 1955.
August the 6th, 1945. Just got out of high school. Got married on August the 4th. We started teaching. Teachers were scarce, and the reason we could teach, we got a permit to teach because there wasn't enough teachers, and you went to summer schools, and you did that during the summer, and I took correspondence courses, but you had to do that in order to have a permit. We called it the primer then, it was like kindergarten, in the 1st grade through the 8th grade. The first year that I taught, I had several 5th grade students. I was 8 years older than they were. Ray Gold was one of my pupils. E.B. Krantz was one. And I taught them the states and the capitals. And it was just fun teaching kids. I'd been around kids all my life, see, and so it was no problem for me. We'd call up one class and let them do recitations while this other group, they'd just be 2 or 3 or 4 in the class. And then they would listen to the older students and they learned a lot from them. We did our own cleaning and we did our own building their fire. We had a water bucket with a dipper back there and a toilet outside. And when anybody wanted to go to the bathroom, you raised your hand. You excuse them. Sometimes, I tell you a funny thing we used to do. To let somebody know that somebody was out at the bathroom, we'd lay a book, have a place that you laid this book, and this book, when they come back in, they'd pick it up so you'd know nobody was there.
Draper was a teacher for the first 7 years of her career, then moved to Hillsdale Elementary in 1952 and served as principal there for 3 years.
We played basketball. We won the basketball tournament. I got pictures of all that. Canella Wallace was my coach. And honey, we had the ball team, Melbourne Cothran and Jackie Eller and all that bunch. In this old book that I've got, my kids have drawn and written all over it, but I've got the scores that we made while we were playing ball of these different schools, pictures of all that. And so I was reminiscing with all that. We made an annual in '53 at Hillsdale.
Okay. Were those good times?
They were really good times.
Draper made a career change after her 3rd year wrapped up at Hillsdale.
I had always wanted to be a nurse, and I never had a chance to go to nursing school. And the hospital was built, and I had a chance to do nursing. And I had only got up to making $120 a month after all those years.
Still, she never regretted starting her working career as a school teacher.
I just enjoyed being with the kids.
Allen County's Darrell Lyles also taught in a one-room schoolhouse. He taught at 2 schools for 12 years, where he was the only teacher.
Mount Victory.
One-room schoolhouse.
One-room schoolhouse. Had all 8 grades in one room. And that particular year, you couldn't, an 8th grader, you couldn't pass them to high school. I don't care if they had all A's on the report card. They had to go in town about a week before school was out and take what they call the 8th grade examination. And we went over to the Scottsville City Schools school on Saturday, and they took the test. Well, the next week they came down to the school with the grades. I had 5 8th graders. I worked them pretty hard that year. I thought if one of them was to fail, it looked bad on me. So when we got their grades, they had to average 75 to pass. My lowest one with the lowest grade was 87.
Wow.
And the one with the highest grade was 94. And the other 3 was in between, 87 and 94. And I thought, oh, I done something right. Over at Gilead, of course, they wanted to meet one Saturday a month while school was out and play. So we met one Saturday. Then the next time we met, June asked me if I wanted her to fix my dinner. I said, sure, I want you to fix it. I said, we'll be over there all day. But she knew something that I didn't know. So we got over there, and we got the softball game going. I was umpiring, the volleyball going. One boy brought his croquet set. The smaller children brought some of their toys. About 11 o'clock, I noticed cars pulling in down at the church. I said, boys, what's going on down at the church? They didn't know. I said, well, there wouldn't be a funeral down there today, would there? They didn't know. I said, well, let's don't be too noisy. About 11:30, the cars started leaving the church, coming up to the schoolhouse. And I kept asking, what's going on? Nobody got out till they all got parked. Then the men all started getting out, and they went in the schoolhouse and packed the seats out and took them around on the other side of the building. It's shady over there. I kept asking them what was going on. They didn't know. Well, when they got the seats all out, then the women all started getting out, and they had a basket. Well, in about 15, 20 minutes, Mr. Arthur Hogue, he came around the corner of the house and hollered for me to come up there. Well, when I went around the corner of the house, they started singing happy birthday to me. Well, that brought a few tears to my eyes, thinking they thought enough of me to go to that trouble to fix me a birthday dinner. Now, that's the kind of people they were over there, and it was 50 mile and 2/10 round trip over there, and if I hadn't liked that, I wouldn't have drove that ever for 7 years.
Today, it would not be allowed, but in those years, Lyles also took his students to church during the school day.
Ted told me the first day, a revival starts, we want the school to come. I said, we'll be there in the daytime. So, about a week before revival was to start, I stopped at the superintendent's office one evening, and I told him, I said, now, revival's fixing to start at Cedar Cross, and they want us to come, and I said, we're going. And I'll write on the blackboard where we're at in case some of you was to come out and know where we was. So we got out there the first day, lined up, made 2 lines. And I told them, I said, now, I don't know loud talking or hollering or cutting up going down there or coming back. So I walked, brought the back end of the line. We went down. They couldn't have behaved any better. We got down there and went in. I figured the first graders would want to sit with their parents, but they didn't. They wanted to sit with me. And I'd end up some days holding one asleep. But the first day after service was over, we came out. They lined up just like they did going down there. Well, we got about halfway back up to the schoolhouse, and I thought, now when we get up there a little closer, they'll start running to get them lunch boxes. But you know they didn't. They walked right on up to the steps, went in, got their lunch boxes. I just liked over there those 7 years. I just, so far over there, I just liked it over there.
Lyles tells me he enjoyed being a teacher over the years, but he also liked serving as Gilead's softball coach.
I just enjoyed getting their attention and trying to get something across that they needed to know. I know I had a good ball team over there. I had my softball pitcher. Can't think of none of them's names hardly, but he could whip that ball underhanded quick, harder than some of them could throw it overhanded. I asked the superintendent, I said, could I turn out a few days at dinner, just a few days, and go somewhere and play softball? He said I could. So I had a Willis Jeep, and a few days I'd turn out at dinner, load that Jeep up. I remember we went to Mount Zion. We won our game up there. We went to Petroleum. We beat them. We came back down here to Mount Victory, beat them. We beat Cedar Springs. In fact, we never got beat. And we was playing in the tournament up there at Allen County High. Well, that was before they built the new Allen County Elementary building, so that's where the ball diamond was. We was playing Petroleum. Scores was tied, and we was batting there last time. Harold Wayne Foster, he was a big stout boy. He was supposed to come up next to bat. I motioned for him to come over here. I told him, I said, do you see that blacktop road down there? Yeah. I said, can you put a ball down there? He said, yeah. I said, okay, you put one down there and we'll win this ball game because we already had one on base. There was a white house about 30 or 40 feet over on the other side of that blacktop road. You know, the second pitch that they pitched to him, he hit that ball and it landed in the porch of that house over the other side of the highway. Oh, I just knew it'd break out a window or a door, but it didn't. So we won that game. Boy, boy. I don't know, there's just a bunch over there. You couldn't keep them liking them.
Lyles retired from teaching in 1980. Today, the 90-year-old lives with his wife, June, in Allen County. Annette Cothran has lived in Macon County's Hillsdale community her entire life. She started teaching in the 1940s during World War II.
Didn't have anyone to fill his position. And if you honestly knew your alphabet, you were qualified. It was just about that bad. And so we had some people in Hillsdale that went to work in the factories, the wartime factories. And they were going to even have to close the school if they didn't find somebody. And my husband sent me down. He was on the Board of Education. He said, don't close, I'll just send Annette. He did. And I taught there in first and second grade for 2 years. And then I was going to have to go to school, you know, or do something. I decided I didn't even want to do that. So I stayed off a year, and that's when I substituted. And I wound up teaching a solid time because they didn't have any substitute teachers. And I taught over a month for Miss Ena Mae Leith at Pleasant Hill. And that was quite an experience. Miss Ena Mae was an excellent teacher. She had about 30 or 35 students, grades 1 through 8. But those kids were really doing well. She dwelled on the basics. They didn't worry about social studies too much back then. Maybe once a week they might have geography or health or something, but she did have them well, you know, she taught grammar, she taught math, and they had a system where they pretty much utilized the children in the upper grades to help the kids in the lower grades. And she had that kind of a system going. And I was really surprised. And then I taught for nearly 2 months for Mr. Horace White. He had illness in the family. And he taught out, it was out beyond Gale, and I can't remember the name of the school. And Mr. Horace was not as well organized, but he had a large group of kids, and he was struggling away. But you know, not only did you have to teach school, you were your janitor, you had to see that the fires were built, you had to see that the water bucket and the dipper, everybody drank out of the same dipper. I don't see why everybody didn't die, but they didn't. I reckon they built up resistance. But they did. They'd bring in that bucket of water in the dipper. But anyway, it's an experience. And then we didn't think about being a hardship because we didn't have any convenience at home. It was just a little bit of continuation of our lifestyle. And we didn't think anything about it. We just bring in our oil and all the floors so the dust wouldn't be so bad and sweep it in and just do the best you could, you know.
Catherine also helped implement special education into the curriculum after her days of teaching in a one-room schoolhouse.
I started out and I was majoring in mathematics and I was having a lot of trouble getting all my math subjects in continuity because I was just going summers and they didn't offer things in those days like they do now. So I switched my major over to English and I got an English major. I had no intention of teaching special ed, but having a handicapped child, I was trying to get some handicap programs started in our county. And I worked to try to get them started, and it was not easy back then because it was a hush-hush. You didn't discuss. If your child wasn't 100% so-called normal, you didn't talk about it. But anyway, I finally got it organized with the help of the Board of Education, a lot of nice people. And Margaret Thompson was going to teach the class for me. She was qualified and everything. Her mother fell and broke her hip 2 weeks before school started, and she couldn't do it. So the Board of Education called me and said, Annette, you will have to teach her. We're not going to start it because it will flunk. I was already certified. I was certified to get the education that I needed to help my own child. Right. And I didn't want to give up my English major. I wanted to teach English in high school. I was already certified. But I thought, well, I will try it because I worked and got it this far. So I did. And back then we were isolated. I was teaching in the American Legion Hall. And it was not an easy task, but anyway, I was going to teach it until I found somebody, and I got hooked. So I went back to school, and I got my major in special education and minor in psychology.
And did not regret it a bit?
No, I do not regret it. I had a wonderful life. I had a lot of challenges, had to work real hard, but Macon County has been very good to me. The people have been good to me. They listened to me. A lot of times I think they were really get tired of it, but I was like a broken record. I didn't give up. But anyway, I don't regret 1 minute of my decision because it has changed my entire life, and I feel like that the path that I chose gave me a better chance to contribute. Not that I was so good, but I was doing what no one else really wanted to do. Because it was not a popular subject. When people ask you what you were teaching back then, you say special ed, and they say, oh, really? You know, in other words, that's the best you can do. And that was attitude. So you had to overlook that. But that didn't bother me, really. We did a lot of things. We were the first county to mainstream children in the whole state of Tennessee. We were the first county that got on what we call individualized instruction, all of them in Tennessee. So, and we had a lady that was so impressed, she came down and wrote a book on Macon County. Johnny's Johnny is such a bright boy, too bad he's retarded, you know. And so she wrote a book on it, and we've had a lot of acclimates through the years. And even though we're rural and everything else, you can do a lot with a little if you try. And if you have, it's a matter of cooperation. And Macon County did cooperate.
Catherine says she enjoyed her teaching career, but she does have one experience that stands out from all the rest.
When I was teaching homebound instruction, I had two students. They were entirely different. One of them was very, very intelligent, and she had had tuberculosis, and she'd been in bed, and she had not been to school since 2nd or 3rd grade. Her parents had helped her some at home. I started with her in 7th grade, and we did 7, 8, and 9 in 2 years. She went to high school, and she was valedictorian. That same year that she was valedictorian, I had this little girl over in Red Boiling Springs that lived in a most primitive situation. 2-room house, no screen doors, 1 chair in the house, 2 beds, 5 children, you name it. And she had spinal meningitis, and we found a long story. I managed to get her in junior league and all that and got her through surgery. It was a long story. But anyway, she graduated the same year, and she was valedictorian. And that was my special memory.
Nadine Fuqua taught in the Macon County school system for 38 years. She hadn't originally planned to be a school teacher.
I really hadn't thought about it, but the Board of Education asked me after I graduated from high school if I would take New Harmony and on a permit. And so I did, and I taught there 5 years. And then I started to school. I hadn't gone to school, and then I started school. And I would teach and go to school in the summer. I made $60 a month. And 8 months was the first year I taught. We had 8 months school.
Okay.
And then they went to 9 months.
And
$3 a day.
$3 a day.
Yeah.
Did you feel rich in those years?
I got rich that year.
Times were tough in 1943 when Fuqua first started teaching at New Harmony.
We didn't have any material, anything. I'd go to the superintendent's office and pick up 2 brooms and a bucket and dipper and a box of chalk. And that's about all they gave us.
Fuqua says she has fond memories of teaching in a one-room school. She especially enjoys seeing her students years later and finding out what they're doing with their lives. She says if she still taught today, 1st grade would be her choice. However, she believes teachers today, in some ways, have it tougher than she did.
What they tell me is they have a pretty hard job now. They have a lot of paperwork. And I don't think it would be any easier now. They have more to do with than we had.
Today, Fuqua lives in a Gallatin assisted living facility. Hortense Overton taught in Allen, Macon, and Sumner counties through the years. She vividly remembers her first year, 1950, in Allen County.
We were out 3 weeks at one time because of the snow and ice, and I had 14 students, and I thought, how few students, and paying a teacher to come out here And I didn't know how lucky I was until I had 44 at Lafayette Elementary one year.
Overton remembers students in one-room schools being extremely close. And boy, does she have some stories to tell.
I had a son that wasn't old enough to go to school. The last year I was in Allen County, and another little boy that wanted to go. And the superintendent said, well, you don't have but about 20 students. Just let them go and do what they want to, but someone will take them and teach them. Well, those boys, they did. 2 little girls taught those 2 little boys. But we lived close enough to the school that Roger's little dog could hear the children playing. And the dog came to school one day, and I had my back turned to he and this little boy teaching 5th grade. And my children in 5th grade were so tickled, and I thought, what in the world is going on? I turned around, and those 2 little boys were sitting on one of those small seats with that little dog in their arms with a pencil in his paw. Now, that was an experience I had in the one-room school. But the dog didn't bother anybody. They carried him out to play with him. And that was one of my experiences in the one-room school. And then another incident there, I had, the first year I was there, I had 2 8th grade boys. One went home for lunch, and he and this other boy were real good friends. Well, when he came back, it was raining, and here they came in the front door with a bicycle. I said, Morris, you aren't supposed to bring that bicycle in. He said, yeah, but I said, now, Miss Hortense, Bobby's got a new bicycle, and it don't need to get wet. I said, well, if you'll bring it and park it back there in the corner, you can let it stay in, but you're not even to look at it. I look back with it with special memories because the one-room schools, you don't hear of them anymore in our area. And the children, they still seem to respect me. I do see some of them often. I guess when I was a child, I really wanted to be a teacher, but I never thought I would. But after the way everything turned out through the war and everything, I was permitted to get to go to college. And I think I enjoyed all my years of teaching. I enjoyed them. It was hard going to college. Summer, on Saturdays, some night courses, and taking care of well, he was a year old the day his dad started, and then I started in January after he started in September. And getting a babysitter and all that. But our parents were good to keep him if we'd let him stay. But anyway, I enjoyed my years of teaching, most of them. There were some incidents that you would think, well, did I do the right thing or did I? But I've had some very, very smart children, and I had some that just didn't want to work, and I wanted them to work. I wanted them to learn. I tried to teach whether they learned or not.
Most of the old one-room schoolhouses are now a thing of the past. Schools like Frog Pond and Lick Branch. Most of the teachers are also gone. But isn't it wonderful some are still here to tell their stories so we can learn more about the past and can pass that information on to the students and teachers of today. Reporting in Macon County, Barry Hiett, NCTV.